My open and much more. Trump 2020 National Press Secretary Hogan Gidley joins me now. Good evening, Hogan. You were on that trip with the president in November of 2018. Is the allegation of the president maligning troops that's claimed by the anonymous sources in the Atlantic, is that true?
These are disgusting, reprehensible, grotesque lies. I was with the president in Paris. He never said that. He would never say that. In fact, this president would never even think such vile thoughts about the brave men and women of our military. I've been with him many times. I worked in the White House for 3 years. This is absolutely disgusting, the way the media is trying to smear this president, the way they would use cowardly, shady sources who don't have the guts to go on the record, and they don't, and they won't, because they know it's a flat-out lie. In addition, to try and use the military in this way, to try and hurt morale, to lie about the commander-in-chief simply to gain back some semblance of political power is absolutely sickening.
Let me ask you about the trip that clearly from the email from the aide in the Marine Corps, it was bad weather. They couldn't take the helicopter.
Right.
There are questions as to why the president did not take the 2.5-hour drive. Do you know why not?
A couple of things. First of all, let's talk about the helicopter first. It's not the rain that's the issue. Helicopters can fly in rain. It's the fog. It's the cloud cover. Getting there could have happened. They talked about this. We discussed how this would actually look. But any extraction effort would have been impossible. So, for example, had there been, God forbid, a threat against this president or another head of state that was also in attendance, there would be no way to get the president to safety quickly. The driving portion was possible in some form or fashion,
sure,
but it's not safe at all. In addition, we had not coordinated anything with the local officials in Paris. They did not have the assets on the ground necessary to provide the safety, security, and cover for the president to make that trip. We work with the Secret Service, the most brave, most sacrificial, the toughest people on the planet. They knew this wouldn't work. They also know their job is to protect the president. They've done it every single day, every single second. They're going to always do it. And this example is a perfect point to show they always will.
So there was no contingency if there had to be an immediate extraction of the president, if they had driven there. But let me ask you this. I mean, all of this about the president
there's always a contingency. The problem was it wasn't sufficient. They didn't feel strong enough that they could get the president to safety quickly, and that's what's important.
Right. Okay, good. Let's talk about what the president has done for the military and how different it is from when Obama and Biden were in power.
Absolutely. Biden went all over this country apologizing for America. I mean, we just saw a Democrat convention for 4 days in which they tried to tell the American people that America is inherently evil, that it's the cause of the world's problems. They cut funding for the United States military. Remember how bad the VA was? People dying on gurneys in the hallways? It was a train wreck. This president came in, rebuilt the military, trillions of dollars, cleaned up the VA, allowed them to fire people that weren't doing their jobs and protecting our strong vets. In addition, he made sure that over at the VA they could have choice as well, so they didn't have to rely on the Veterans Affairs and the VA hospitals. They could go other places as well. This president has done more for the military. And listen, I have been with him when he goes to Walter Reed and talks to these brave men and women who've lost limbs, who've lost eyes, who've had their heads cracked open by the enemy. And they thanked him for a lot of things. He's been with them. He's cried with them. He respects and reveres what they do. And one thing they consistently say is that this president, one of the things that Biden did was they worked to hamstring the military in Afghanistan with all of these rules of engagement. The president expanded that. The deaths, the maimings went down overseas because now the men and women of the military can defend themselves. They couldn't with Joe Biden and his policies.
Hogan Gidley, thanks so much for making that clear. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Absolutely.
And earlier, I sat down with Senator Rand Paul to discuss the violent riots and mobs that continue to terrorize cities across our country. Take a look. Senator, thanks for being with us. I understand that at least one person has been arrested from the angry mob who attacked you and your lovely wife, Kelly. Do you have any confidence that there will be consequences for the people who are being arrested in these mobs?
I think it's the only way we can stop this is people who break the law have to be arrested and there has to be a punishment. Unfortunately, the man that tried to get to us, who tried to knock the policeman down to get to us, was arrested for punching the policeman and causing a cut that required stitches around the policeman's eye. But then he was released on his own recognizance, which means, I assume, no bail, and he's just gone. In fact, I sort of sarcastically said on Twitter today, if you're looking for him, you might try Kenosha. But this is not funny. I mean, these protesters, we now have pictures of protesters who've been in Portland, Kenosha, Louisville, D.C. Question is who's financing this and who's flying them around? It really is a federal crime to incite riot and to fly people around to instigate violence. And I think that's what's happening. And yes, we've got to get to the bottom of this one person at a time. And once we have suspicion or probable cause, we need to ask a judge for a warrant, and they need to look at their financial records and see who's for this.
Okay, but do you have an idea of who might be financing this?
No, and but we do need to get to the bottom of this because there's one of two possibilities. It could be nefarious, rich individuals who want to foment violence in our cities, or it could be less sinister but still equally as bad. Black Lives Matter is out there collecting corporation money from corporations who want to show the public that they're not racist. But these corporations need to know that that money is going to Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter is giving it to hooligans to cause and create havoc in cities. Someone has to trace the money. I don't know the answer yet, but I certainly think we need to know.
I believe Attorney General Bill Barr is doing that as we speak. But, you know, what is happening in the criminal justice system is so different now. I mean, the idea of the so-called bail reform, which means literally no bail. But now we've got prosecutors, including a prosecutor from Contra Costa County in California, who says that her prosecutors should consider whether looters who've been arrested for stealing, before charging them, they should consider the looter's needs. In other words, if the looter is poor and needed something, that maybe they shouldn't prosecute. And in Manhattan, the DA, Cy Vance, is telling his assistant DAs, you know, make sure that there isn't police brutality, and if you need to, get the arrestees, the looters, to testify against the police. I mean, how are we going to change this criminal justice system? Will it ever change?
NPR had a woman on there talking about why looting was justified. Would that not violate Twitter's policy, basically, that you're not supposed to be inciting violence? Is looting not violence? You had a member of the Black Lives Matter from Chicago, after all the storefronts were broken, running around saying, this is reparations, baby. And so really, in a civilized world, we have people making an argument for looting. So this is a question I have for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. How come they won't condemn these people who attacked my wife and I and the two other women that were with us? They can't attack. And all they do is they get on TV and they say, oh, yeah, there's violence. We don't like violence, but it's all Donald Trump's fault. Well, the cities that the violence is occurring in have been run by Democrats for 50 years. Law and order is largely the province of mayors and governors, not the federal Congress or presidents. And so really the failure is coming from these cities, and they need to own up to it because, frankly, I think a lot of people are not going to be happy living in a country that looks like Portland.
And I think, Senator, what we're seeing now is more and more people, more and more prosecutors being elected and having their elections funded by these left-wing organizations. But Senator Rand Paul, thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Still ahead, Corey Lewandowski and Joe Terrell on what a Biden-Harris White House would mean for America. But first, Biden's out of the bunker. So what's he saying now? You won't believe it. Dan Bongino breaks it all down next.